So it's that time of the week ahead of Gameweek 8 where we discuss our transfer plans fresh off an international break. It's time to look at who we think we should be bringing in, some players we should be holding, and some players that we should be selling. So if you do like the video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. With all that being said, let's get straight into the video. So let's start with our transfer ins then. And in a world where the attackers almost pick themselves in a lot of FPL teams, with Haaland, with Gyökeres and with João Pedro currently, I've got two players to transfer in that aren't those three players. Starting with Voltemade at Newcastle. Now this is a guy that's really started his career well at Newcastle, and during the international break he's got his first international goal for the German national team. So he's in a rich vein of form, and going forward Newcastle's fixtures don't really look too bad either. You've got Brighton away, Fulham at home and West Ham away, with Brentford away after that. The only negative there, yes, there's 3 fixtures away from home out of the 4. But the way Voltemade plays, Newcastle just want to get the ball into the box because he is such a target man with utilising his height. You know, he's a threat from set pieces, and we've just seen how deadly he can be in the air, as most of his goals have been headers in the last few weeks. So certainly one that I would be considering to bring in. If you wanted to go a little bit more differential, I wouldn't necessarily in the past have ever called Bowen a differential, but plenty of people dropped off him after the poor start West Ham made to the season, where now it's finally time for the tables to turn just a little bit. Obviously bringing in the new manager at West Ham in Nuno, I think is going to sort of flip the script for West Ham this season potentially, and with the run of fixtures they have coming up, there's real potential of that to start right away. You've got Brentford away up next, Brentford at home, which is a nice fixture for West Ham to try and get that first win under Nuno in the league. And then you've got a Leeds away fixture, Newcastle at home, not an ideal team, but at least it's at home. And then Burnley at home after that, and Bournemouth away. So it's a good run coming up. So if you would really like to take a punt on Jarrod Bowen, he is traditionally a guy that overperforms his XG per 90 as well. So I'm looking at his XG there, and it's nothing to write home about. Remember, that's obviously going to be swayed a little bit from the poor start that West Ham made. That will only rise, and I think Jarrod Bowen himself, I think that's 2 goals in 3 games. So he's starting to show that he's starting to hit that bit of form now, and it could be a good jumping on point for Jarrod Bowen. Then onto the midfielders I have chosen. Now, Bukayo Saka is up first, understandably. This is another guy now who's really starting to find that form again. He's always been a decent fantasy league option when he can keep fit. But he looked good for Arsenal. We realised he's on penalties ahead of Gyökeres. So he got his goal just before the international break for Arsenal. He also scored for England and had 2 pretty impressive performances for England over the international break. And I think now is a great time to be jumping on Saka. It's going to be difficult for me because I've gone down the Victor Gyökeres route. And then I've got my 2 Arsenal defenders. So it's going to be difficult for me, but with an XG of 0.32 and a very high XA actually, expected assists of 0.38, I think going forward and remaining fit, Bukayo Saka is going to be a fantastic asset to have, considering the run of fixtures as you can see Arsenal have there as well. It's great jumping on point. And then next up I have Enzo Fernandez. Now he did pull out of the last game for Argentina during the international break due to an injury. But we feel like it's going to be one of those international break injuries where it's almost like they want to get him back at Chelsea, make sure he's fit for the upcoming period that Chelsea have with Premier League and Champions League to come up. That being said, with Cole Palmer injured, Enzo Fernandez should be the favoured player to play in that number 10 role, so he should get even more advanced than he normally will. And then you also look at the start he's made. He's got a good XG per 90 at 0.35. And if you look at his average points per game at 5.9, I think he represents really good value at something like 6.7 million. Even if you still were holding on to a Cole Palmer, I'd be tempted to make that, if you didn't go for Saka, make that straight swap to Enzo again, because look at the Chelsea fixtures. Nottingham Forest away is not the fixture it was, so I'd actually fancy him this weekend. And then Sunderland at home, Tottenham away could be difficult, but Chelsea traditionally do well against Spurs. And then you've got Wolves at home and Burnley away. So really, really nice fixtures and a great time to almost jump back onto Chelsea players after they had a really good start run of fixtures at the start of the season. Just a tiny downturn in the difficulty of the fixtures, and then we're back to this fantastic run for them. Then as we move on to the defence, Jurrien Timber. Now for me, I've said this in my last video as well, I think it's important to get pretty much a triple up on Arsenal at this stage, as their fixtures are so kind. But on top of that, I like a double up in the Arsenal defence, because by far it is the best defence in the league. Combine that with the fixtures. And then it comes the issue of who do you pick. I think Gabriel is a great option as well. But I put Jurrien Timber here because Gabriel does get a lot of attention because of his attacking threat from corners. But if we speak about attacking threat, and certainly this season in terms of Jurrien Timber, with an XG of 0.33, it's actually better than Bukayo Saka's per 90 at the moment, which is incredible. Now, I don't think that's sustainable for 1 second, but it just shows how attacking Jurrien Timber has been this season. So for me, especially if you want to take a punt and maybe take a risk on that upside, I think he's one to go for, and he's 0.4 cheaper than Gabriel currently. So definitely somebody that we should be bringing into our teams. Other than that, we'll go back to Chelsea and Trevor Chalobah. Now, again, this comes down to fixtures just once again. They're really good fixtures for a defender, with Nottingham Forest, who aren't really scoring that many goals. And then 3 teams that, 2 of them newly promoted and 1 being Wolves in the next 4 games after that. And with Chalobah now back from his suspension, and potential of Tosin to be back in that centre-back position alongside him, that Chelsea defence will become a bit stronger again after quite a few red cards and injuries in recent weeks. So I would expect Chelsea to get back to their defensive best as well. And then also Chalobah, he's got that defensive contributions compared to somebody like a Cucurella. And he's also got a pretty decent goal threat. And he's probably this season showed more of an attacking threat than Marc Cucurella. So for what is around about £1 million less, I would go for Chalobah over somebody like Cucurella. So let's move on to the holds. So starting this section then with Victor Gyökeres for Arsenal. Now, I brought him into this section simply because he's a player I've got. And if you've already gone down that route of picking him over Bukayo Saka, it's something that I would just carry on with for now. Obviously, his goals have dried up a little bit for Arsenal, but his performances are there. The XG per 90 is there, and I can't imagine, especially with those fixtures, I can't imagine it would take long for Victor Gyökeres to start firing once again. It's a shame he's not on those penalties, but there's always those chances, even if Saka maybe gets subbed early in the game, even if Victor Gyökeres feels confident one game, there's always that chance that maybe he will take the next penalty ahead of Saka. But the feeling is, unless Saka misses one, why should he give them up, essentially? But I think going forward, if you've gone with Victor Gyökeres, stick with him for now. And then another one is João Pedro, who a few people have decided to transfer João Pedro. The returns aren't quite there in recent weeks. But then again, we come back, like we always do, to the fixtures. With Nottingham Forest up next, I think there's potential for Chelsea to put them to the sword. There's a lot of turmoil at Nottingham Forest at the moment, and then followed up with a home game against Sunderland. So I expect in the next couple of weeks, next couple of games at least, that João Pedro will start returning again. He was rested over the international break. I don't think there's any real issue about it regarding injuries. I think it was just he sort of had minor issues, so they wanted to keep him fresh once again for that busy period they have coming up, and he will be starting this weekend, as they don't really have many choices in that number 9 role, so he will be starting in that number 9 position for some great fixtures. Then we move on to Jack Grealish. Now, I've got this guy in the hold at the moment because I think he's still a great option. Just don't be fooled by the sort of red flag against his name. That's simply because he can't play against his parent club in Manchester City. So you will only be missing him for one game. So for one game, you can easily just put him on your bench, move on, and he'll be back with you next week. And to be honest, in a pretty decent fixture against Tottenham at home, back at home again. And he has been very effective, certainly in terms of assist output, and even grabbed you a goal in the last game if you did own him. So a lot of positives still with Jack Grealish. Just write this week off and keep him in your teams, on your bench, ready for the game after. Then I've actually put Mo Salah in the next midfield slot. Now, my reason being for this, Salah hasn't performed at the levels that we expect, but the fixtures do point to him maybe being able to turn it round. Manchester United next can be a very difficult fixture for Liverpool, but it can also be a reasonably, fruitful fixture for him, especially for Mo Salah. We know he has a great record against Manchester United. On top of that, he is only a hold if you don't need that funds to bring in somebody. Say you haven't got Erling Haaland at the moment still. Then I would absolutely back that transfer, because I think Haaland is in incredible form at the moment. The fixtures are about to turn in a negative way for Manchester City, but the way Haaland's playing, he could haul against just about anybody at the moment. So, as long as it's not a money situation and you need that money, I think it's viable to hold Salah and back him in those fixtures that he has coming up just before Man City. The next 3, see how he does. No real returns in them, then maybe look to analyse his position in the team again then. Then in defence, Marc Cucurella. Now, again, I do prefer Trevor Chalobah. But if you're there with Marc Cucurella in your team now, there's no real need to be rushing to get rid of him because of those great fixtures that Chelsea have. Yes, it would be nice to save that million and have somebody like Trevor Chalobah, put that million somewhere else. But Marc Cucurella is just about nailed in that left-back position. I think he had one game where he was dropped earlier in the season. I had him in my team and I was pretty disappointed by that, but the clean sheet wasn't there anyway for him. I think it was Brentford away off the top of my head, and then he was brought on at half-time anyway. So he is probably the most nailed defender to an extent for Chelsea. So I look to keep him and target those fantastic fixtures. Then next, I've actually got Virgil van Dijk here. He actually scored in the international break for the Netherlands, and there's quite a few Liverpool players that seem to perform really well over the international break, with Szoboszlai scoring a late equaliser as well for Hungary against Portugal. Now, for me, again, I'm sort of talking about the form of these players because maybe Liverpool can start to turn it round after the international break. I think they know they've got to if they want to keep pace with Arsenal now. hopefully that team can start to gel a bit, and hopefully will solidify the defence a bit. You know, the confidence maybe can build in the next 2 games, and everything will start to click a little bit. So certainly over the next 3 fixtures, just hold Virgil van Dijk and just see how Liverpool start this period after the international break, and then go from there. After that, let's move on to the sells. So first up then, in the forward positions, I've gone with Ollie Watkins as my first sell. I think simply because of that injury and him missing the Latvia game for England. The quote here, apparently that Unai Emery will need to assess him over the coming days, and Villa won't be taking any risks with him and will only select him if he is fully fit and available. And can we guarantee that? I feel no, not going into the game week anyway. It sounds like it's not something we'd even get out of a press conference on Friday. So for me, that's not worth the risk, especially with the start he's made. Obviously, that's going to sort of leave a bit of a sort of bad taste in people's mouths. It's been a poor start. They've had to persist with him. Yes, he did score, not the last game, the one before that. And he did get off the mark, and he scored for England as well. So there's signs of that form returning for Ollie Watkins. But again, 2.9 points per 90 is not enough really for an £8.7 million striker in our teams. And again, with that injury, it just compounds the decision for me. You get rid of him. You haven't got much more to maybe upgrade him to somebody like a Gyökeres. You could even bring in somebody, like I said, Voltemada, and save yourself some money. If you haven't got João Pedro, bring him in for Ollie Watkins. But for me, definite sell really. And then after that, I've actually got Richarlison. I've been quite impressed with his start to the season, to be honest. When he has played, he's looked quite threatening, and he's starting to show why Tottenham decided to buy him in the first place, almost for the first time in his Tottenham career. I think it's the best he's played, but last game he was dropped again, and with the attacking talent they have available, and they do have a bit now. You've got Kolo Muani, maybe when Dominic Solanke comes back as well. There's just too much rotation risk there. Do I think he'll start this next game against Aston Villa? I do, but just because of that rotation risk at this time, with the few strikers that we have available, you just want to make sure that they're playing, and ideally playing 90 minutes. And you just can't get that with Richarlison, in my opinion. This is one I'm putting my neck out on the line. He could easily score against Aston Villa, who've had a tough start to the season. Could easily start and he could score. But I was almost struggling for players to sell, and I wanted to make a choice here that was a bit more edgy, and get people thinking a little bit more. Next up then, in the midfield, I've got Cole Palmer, understandably. He's probably still out with his groin injury. It's become a persistent problem all season, sort of back in and then back out the team. He's hardly played any minutes this season. When he has played, he hasn't been too bad, to be honest, but it's just been so few and far between. So for now, just wait until he's back, and wait until he's scoring. Even with those lovely Chelsea fixtures, that wouldn't tempt me, because we don't know for sure when he's going to be back. Then next up is a player I've got in my team, and it's Reinders I've gone with this time. Now, I wouldn't say it's completely ideal to sell him this week ahead of Everton at home, but it's the fixtures after that. So I think he's a player that we're probably going to be looking to sell anyway, just because the returns aren't there, compounded by a difficult trip to Aston Villa, Bournemouth at home, who Bournemouth are playing really well. Then you've got Liverpool and Newcastle after that. And I'm not sure we want to be holding a player like Reinders, who isn't really returning like some people hoped he would. And then he's sort of one of those late sort of runs into the box specialists. And because of that, he's not really getting any sort of defensive contribution numbers either. So you're not getting one or the other from him very frequently. And for 5.8 million, you can get somebody in like, at the moment, I've got Caicedo as well as Reinders. And don't get me wrong, most of the time I would start Reinders over Caicedo. But Caicedo, you've always got those not reliable, but semi-reliable DEFCON potential points. But also, he's actually chipping in with more goals than Reinders is at the moment, which seems to be the theme with a lot of defensive midfielders. It's crazy that they get these DEFCON points added this season, but I've never seen them almost attack with such threat this season. You've got players like Declan Rice and Caicedo, even Gravenberch as well, and they're just returning machines this season. So I just don't think Reinders falls in either of those categories, and for me that makes him a sell and somebody I could well be selling this week. Then finally in the defence we've got Livramento at Newcastle. This one's a bit of a shame because Newcastle have got a decent-ish run of fixtures, as I mentioned, with Voltemada. And that defence is pretty solid. It's one of the best in the league. But that injury for Livramento is going to put him out till mid-November is the early sort of prognosis. And yeah, he's not sort of one of these players we want to be holding till November, especially at 5 million. And we can be jumping off to just about anybody at that price point. Then finally, I want to finish off with Frimpong. If you are still holding on to Frimpong, it's tough luck really, because that right back position for Liverpool, I think we all thought he was brought in to take the Trent Alexander-Arnold role, and then unfortunately for Conor Bradley, he would get pushed to the bench a lot more often than not. But to be honest, neither of them have started that often. And because of that rotation risk, and with the potential of Dominic Szoboszlai playing in that position, I don't think you can pick any sort of Liverpool right back, especially Frimpong, who we thought would be a great option, especially with his attacking threat as well. And it just hasn't been there, has it? So, especially for what we say, 5.8 million, no, it's time to get rid of him. So really appreciate you sticking around for the whole video. If you did like it, hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. As I mentioned before, it would really help the channel out. And I will see you in the next video, which will be my team selection video. And that should be out in the next day or two. So I will see you then.